Okay, let's work on our math. We've been learning about fractions, and we talk about sometimes how math is like a language. You'll learn terms and things in math that's almost like learning another language, and we're going to add something to our math language today. Okay, so we've been learning about fractions and different ways to name fractions, halves, thirds, fourths, things like that. Now, if the word we're going to learn today is partition, that means divide. Okay, so in your math homework today, which is page 251 to 252, you're going to be given a shape and then asked to partition it. So it starts out as one whole, but then imagine that you're told partition this rectangle into thirds. Well, that means divide it into equal sections. Okay, so this, when I used the marker to draw these lines, I was partitioning this rectangle into thirds. So remember that for fractions, it needs to be equal parts. Can't just be divided into the number of shapes, but they're not all the same size. They need to be equal shapes. All right. So let's look at your worksheet and do a few together. So you'll see it says partition the shape to show equal part, label each part. All right, so here we have a square, and it asks us at the top to partition it into halves, which we know mean 2, divided into 2. Remember, we've talked about it? When you divide something into 2 equal parts, they become half. 1/2, 1/2. Okay, so we'll divide this into half. Then we name it 1/2, 1/2. And how many halves make one whole? 1, 2. 2 halves make one whole. All right, let's do the same for the rectangle. Partition this rectangle into thirds. So we will divide it and divide it again. And look, I'm doing my best to make each section an equal part. And then we will label the parts. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It's 3 equal parts, so the number on bottom is 3. And the name of it is 1/3. Now, how many thirds make one whole? 1, 2, 3. 3 thirds make one whole. Now let's partition this circle into fourths. Fourths is what is written on your page above it. Fourths. Now a circle you can't partition like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. This makes 4 sections, but they're not equal. You can tell they're different. They're too different from each other. They're not equal. So a circle you don't partition like that. A circle, you can think of it sort of as like the way you would slice a pie or a pizza. Fourths. Now we can label them. 1/4, 4th, 1/4, 1/4. And how many fourths make one whole? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 fourths. So those 4 fourths make one whole circle. All right? Now, after you've done this, they're going to ask you to think of another way. Sometimes there's more than one way to partition a shape into equal parts. Okay? So here's an example of a rectangle into fourths, but can we do it another way? Is there another way to partition this shape into fourths? So we can go this long way. It's a little bit harder just because it's a longer line to draw straight, but that is also fourths. All right, so they're going to ask you that a few times to do a shape, and then have you be able to say, these are partitioned 2 different ways, but they still, each part equals 1/4. This is 1/4. This is also 1/4. Oh, I have to write it so small. Each part is 1/4. although it's two different ways to partition the shape. All right? Now, they're going to give you more chances to work on that. They have asked you to partition a circle and a square in different ways, and then also are asking you about the fractions that are colored. I'm going to do another one to show you. This is number 8. And this will be partly colored, and you're going to give the name of the fraction, okay? So this circle is in how many equal shapes? It's in 4, and one part is colored. So we're going to name that shape, name that fraction is 1/4. All right? Now, what we also want to know, if 1/4 is colored, how much is not colored? What's the name of that fraction? Can you guess? Well, the not colored section is 1, 2, 3. Uncolored is 3/4. All right? So you're going to answer both questions. How many are colored? 1/4. How many are not colored? 3/4. So you'll get to practice it several different ways. On the back, you'll do more of this same type stuff, and then you'll practice some telling time on the review in the very back. So I hope you're understanding fractions. I'm glad we're getting to experiment with them so many different ways, drawing them, partitioning them, naming them. And I think it will become more and more clear to you. If you have any questions or need help with this, please circle the ones that you're having trouble with and send me a message so that I can give you some help. This week for reading, I want you to spend time on SSR. Do you remember we had started doing that in class? Sustained silent reading. Remember, everyone would get a book and I would turn on the timer and we would sit quietly at our desk and we would read until the timer went off. Okay? It's a very good skill to build up and make stronger for yourself, to be able to sit down and open a book and read it silently, and even to build up your time, be able to do it for longer and longer. Now, and people all feel differently. Some people already just read for fun because it's something enjoyable to them, okay? Sometimes some people find reading quite a bit more challenging, or maybe it's hard to stay focused or to concentrate. Even some people who like to read for fun can have trouble focusing and staying on task. So sustained silent reading, having that as a skill and practicing it to get better at it is really important. So this week, I would like you to do sustained silent reading every day for at least 10 minutes, okay? It can be longer, but at least 10 minutes, okay? And each day, I want you to put in a reading journal and to keep track, okay? So you'll write down how many minutes, and then you'll also, well, you can just write how many minutes because maybe it's more than 10. But it needs to be at least 10. Each day, so starting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're going to write down how many minutes and then 2 or 3 sentences about what you read, okay? The 3rd grade is working on this, and I think it's a really good way to keep you in the habit of reading and not forget what you've read. So if you are reading a chapter book, this will be the same book each day. If you are reading just a picture book, it might be a different book each day. But I want you to do your sustained silent reading, write down how many minutes you did it, and 2 to 3 sentences about what you read. On Friday, you're going to do a book review. So it will either be about one chapter book that you spent all those days reading, or can be just whichever book you'd like most to tell us about if you read several. All right? So I'll tell you more about it in live class, and you have several days this week to do it. We'll do it again next week as well. So we'll get better and better at this. But sustained silent reading, which is something we were working on in class, but I now want you to practice it at home. Maybe your grown-up can help you set a timer so you know, I'm going to sit down with this book and I'm going to train myself to be focused and stay concentrating on this and getting better at reading silently until the timer beeps. I won't get up, all right? And then I want you to write down how many minutes, a few sentences about what you read, and keep in mind that by Friday you'll want to be able to give us a book review, okay? Okay, for history, let's turn to the next section of our textbook. I'd like you to have your textbook out with you right now, and let's read these pages, 164 to 166 together. So grab your textbook. It'd be nice if you had a pencil or something with you, and we'll underline our key words as we get to them, all right? 164, the heading says, Headed for War. Leaders from nearly every colony met in the city of Philadelphia, and they talked about what to do. They made a list of their complaints against Great Britain, and they sent it to the king. Okay, so you remember what we've read so far are things about how many colonists had been angry about the different taxes they'd had to pay, and then some colonists dumped a whole bunch of tea in the harbor to say we won't pay the tax on this tea, and we're protesting how things are happening. And so some colonists had been taken away some of their rights. They couldn't have town meetings anymore or make their own rules anymore. And so increasingly the colonists were feeling like we don't have rights and we don't want to be a part of Great Britain. Or they just felt like if we are a part of Great Britain, we want to be represented. Like they wanted to feel like they had their own power for their area in the world and their colonies and all of these things. So all of this is stirring up. And then there's also been the Boston Massacre, where British soldiers shot into a crowd and people died. And so there's a lot of anger and confusion, and people, all of the colonists don't feel the same way, right? Some of them are loyalists and they feel like we're subjects of the king and we have to figure out how to just respect what he's saying to do. And other people were patriots and they said, no, we should be our own country. We should be independent. So even all the colonists don't all feel the same way. It must have been a very confusing time to be around. Okay, so a lot of the leaders of the colonies all gathered in one place to talk about what do we do now? What's our plan? So they made a list of all of their complaints against Great Britain. They sent it to the king. Most of the men did not want the colonies to go to war against Great Britain, but some were afraid there was no other way to settle the problems. King George did not want a war either, but he did not want to give in. He believed the colonists were wrong. They were British citizens. He was their king. He felt they must be made to obey. The colonists began to gather guns. They stored them in the town of Concord. They wanted to be ready to fight. The British general, Thomas Gage, heard about the guns. He sent 700 soldiers to find and destroy them. A silversmith from Boston named Paul Revere found out about the soldiers' plans. He jumped on his horse and he rode towards Concord. All along the way, he warned other colonists, the British are coming. Young men called Minutemen took up their guns. Minutemen were ready to fight at any minute. So it's one of our first bold print words we're coming to. Can you underline that information? Minutemen were ready to fight at any minute. Near Concord was the town of Lexington. The British soldiers marched there first, but the colonists were ready for them. About 70 Minutemen waited on Lexington Green. British soldiers lined up facing them. No one knows who fired the first shot, but both sides fired. Some men were killed. War between the colonies and Great Britain had begun. Some colonial leaders had begun to speak out about war. Patrick Henry, a lawyer and a patriot from Virginia, made a famous speech. "We must fight," he said. "I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." So that's a famous thing that he said. A lot of people heard him and they felt really inspired by that. Other colonists were beginning to feel as Patrick Henry did. They didn't want to be under the king. When people fight to change their government, it is called a revolution. When people fight to change their government, it is called a revolution. The war between the colonists and the British was called the Revolutionary War. Okay, so where were the very first shots of the war fired? Did you hear? They were fired in Lexington. And where had they hidden the guns? Where were they gathering the guns so they could be ready? They had gathered the guns in a place called Concord. Okay, and the colonists met together in Philadelphia to say, what are we going to do about this? What's our next plan? Okay, and the Minutemen were young men who had trained to be soldiers, and they said they were ready to fight at any minute. Okay, now I want you to do this worksheet. It's page 171, but you'll need what you find on page 173 to complete it, because you're going to put in order what happened. You're going to describe the picture and what happened, okay? So first, next, last. And here are the pictures. You'll cut these apart along the, thick black lines. Cut them apart. Look back in your book if you can't remember. Write which one happened first, next, and last. And I would like you to write a sentence that is describing what it is. What is this picture? All right? I think if you're not sure about that, please just open your book and look again so you can tell what you're seeing in each picture and what order these things happened, okay? I see soldiers on Lexington Green. I see colonial leaders gathered together to talk about what should happen. I see someone I'm guessing is Paul Revere writing to warn them that the British are coming, right? So cut those apart and put them in order and write a sentence describing what they are. In English, we've learned a lot about how to make a good sentence. We've learned about all the different things it takes. One thing that we've talked a lot about is that a sentence always needs a capital letter at the beginning. It needs to have some kind of verb, right? It needs to have an end mark, and it needs to make complete sense. If it's just a little bit of a sentence, a little bit of a thought, a few words that go together but don't make a complete thought, it's called a fragment. It's not a complete sentence. Like if you just saw a brave cop, that's just a fragment, okay? That's not a full sentence, okay? Well, there's also, we've talked about a subject. The subject is who or what the sentence is about, right? We've talked a lot about the subject. We've found that part of the sentence. And up till now, when we've talked about the rest of the sentence, we've called it the action part, because the second part of the sentence always has some type of action word, a verb in it, right? It can be a helping verb or a linking verb, or it can just be an action word. But now we're going to start calling it the predicate part of the sentence. It's the second part, not the subject, but what the subject does or is, okay? So predicate is just maybe a fancier word, and it's the word that you'll keep using in 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade and 6th grade, okay? As you're learning more and more about how to make good sentences, all right? The subject part of a sentence tells who or what the sentence is about, all right? The predicate part tells what the subject does or what the subject is. The main word in the predicate part is the verb, the action word. Okay, we've done a lot of work with all the different, nouns or a person, place, or a thing. A verb is an action word, or it can be a helping verb or a linking verb, right? Now, let's look at these sentences. Dogman is a brave cop. Well, if the subject part is who or what the sentence is about, which part of this sentence is the subject part? Dogman or is a brave cop? Dogman, we can draw one line right between to divide the subject part from the predicate part, right? This verb right here is, that's our clue that here's where the predicate part is beginning, all right? Now, a subject can be more than one word. A subject part of a sentence can be more than one word. But in this case, it's just Dogman, subject part, is a brave cop, predicate part, right? The predicate tells who or what the subject is. a brave cop. All right? And now look at this one. Sonic races to first place. Look, I forgot my end mark. It's not a complete sentence without an end mark. I'm glad I saw that. Sonic races to first place. Right? What's the subject part of this sentence? Well, who or what is this sentence about? It's about Sonic. And which part of the sentence do you think is the predicate part? This will be telling us what the subject is doing or what the subject is. And so we see this, races to first place. Well, let's draw a dividing line between these two. Races is a verb. It's the action part. This is the clue to let us know here's where the predicate is, okay? Sonic is the subject, and races to first place is the predicate. How about this one? Second graders love to read. I bet you know how to divide this sentence, don't you? We want to divide between the subject part and the predicate part, so we'll draw a line right there. The subject of this sentence is second graders, and the predicate of this sentence is love to read. Here's our verb, our action word, so we know that's a main part of our predicate of a sentence. Okay, so now you have a worksheet today, 277 to 278. You're going to get to practice this on your English worksheet. You're going to be finding some sentences that you have to match the subject part to the predicate part, draw lines to match them. So you're going to read different parts of the sentence and see which one of these do I think go together and match them up. And you will also have time to fill in the blank to make a complete sentence, and then also divide the sentences between subject part and predicate part. So remember, sometimes in English you have more than one instruction to follow, right? You get, on number 8, you get to write your own sentence and draw a line between the subject and the predicate part, okay? So yeah, you'll just be doing that, connecting different subjects and predicates to make complete sentences, and also filling in the blank to make sentences, and then drawing your dividing line, all right? One example on your page, I'll do one example here with you, just so you can imagine what's here. 9, let's just do 9, 10, and 11. It says, the building, the people, and the windows. You can see none of these are complete sentences. These are just fragments, and they are all subject parts, okay? And then we'll have this other option on this side. Let me make sure I'm writing it correctly. Are colored glass. Sing to God. Put those end marks in. Was tall. Now you can see none of these are complete sentences on their own, right? They're just fragments, and they all have a verb in them. So we know these are all predicate parts. Let's connect these by drawing a line into complete sentences that make sense, okay? The building, are colored glass? No, that doesn't sound right. The building, sing to God? No, that doesn't make sense. How about the building was tall? That makes sense. So we'll connect those two, all right? The people, are colored glass? No. The people sing to God. Yes, that makes sense. The people is the subject part, and sing to God is the predicate part. The windows are colored glass. All right, so that's one section of your worksheet. That's the kind of stuff you're going to be doing, okay?